Welcome to Can TV's Alma's channel. We're here to interview some young people. But before I introduce them to you all, I just want to say Alma stands for Association of Latinas Motivating Action. If at any point you have questions about today's show, I want you to look at this number at the bottom of the screen. You're welcome to call in, ask questions. If you want to follow up on today's program, you are welcome to go to www.almachicago.org. That's Alma's webpage. There you'll find our contact information and as well as an email to reach out to us and ask us any questions that you might have. So, like I said, I'm David. I'm here to represent Alma. Today we're going to follow up with a dialogue that we started last month during Pride, which is to talk about LGBTQ youth, LGBTQ and or homeless youth, and some of the barriers that they face, specifically youth who identify as Black and brown, whether in the community or in services or do family acceptance, and how are we being supportive to these youth? What are some of the barriers that they're encountering? And yeah, so we're going to keep that dialogue moving. It's going to be a series of shows such as where we first interviewed a worker from Broadway Youth Center. We're going to be interviewing in the future, those who work in the mental health care, specifically for youth. But today, one of the most important perspectives is the ones from our youth themselves. And I have two awesome youth right here, right beside me, who are going to give us a little bit of insight on some of the barriers and challenges that LGBTQ, youth of color go through. And we're going to talk this out. We're going to kiki. We're going to chill. Okay? So listen up. Awesome. So let me introduce. This is
Tia.
This is Yordana. And just for I want to get our viewers into the habit of understanding what does it mean to share your pronouns. So, do either of you want to answer that?
Sure.
Go for it, boo.
So, to share your pronouns is basically the gender which you wish to be identified as. Some go by she, her, hers pronouns. Others go by they, them, theirs. Some go by he, him, his. It's simply to acknowledge the person the way they wish to be acknowledged.
Awesome. So, what are your pronouns?
My pronouns are she, her, and her.
Okay, and how about you, T?
My pronouns are none because I identify as gender nonconforming.
Okay, got you. And my pronouns are queen. Because I'm a queen.
Awesome.
Right?
Come on.
Awesome. Sorry, a little bit of a mess. That's what you have when you put a bunch of queens on camera. So let's get a little bit honestly, I just want to get to know you two for a second, about yourselves. Do you mind sharing a little bit about who you are and, how did we just get connected right now? Do you mind sharing that with our viewers? Any of you want to start first?
I don't mind.
Awesome.
Would you like to start?
Okay. I got connected to Alma through the Broadway Youth Center. Okay. Person that you interviewed last month during Pride. Crystal, yeah, shout out to Crystal, whoop whoop. And a little bit about me in regards to my story, how I became in this situation.
Okay.
So I would say officially became homeless around July 2016, but before then I was actually kicked out of my house by my mother in April. She told me, oh, remember how I said I was gonna kick you out at 18? That's still a thing, right? So I'm like, oh, okay. Wow. I'll be leaving then. So I left her and I moved with my grandmother and my father, and that lasted about 2 days after, until 2 days after I turned 18. Okay. And from that point, I was stranded. I was scared, I'm I moved down here thinking I had a secure place for at least the next couple of years, and they'd be kicked out basically right when I turned 18 was just really scary.
Wow, got you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate that. Yeah. How about you, boo?
So, a little bit about me is I grew up in Chicago and in the Chicagoland area. I grew up in foster care in the DCFS system. I am not experiencing homelessness or housing instability currently, but I do have a well thought out experience of various systems and the circumstances of my peers who are experiencing homelessness and housing instability. And I just gotta say that it's sad, but also it's a beautiful thing, because when I go to these different spaces and see that, you know, other folks like me that identify like me who are experiencing homelessness or housing instability, I don't see people that are struggling or people that are in a world of pain or turmoil or hardship. I see resilience, I see strength, and I see a community that, regardless of how hard they've been hit, they continue to try to strive to go further. I could easily look at any one of my peers from the Broadway Youth Center or any peers experiencing housing instability, and I would never assume that they were homeless or dealing with housing instability. And I just want to say that it's like such an honor to be around so many people who have such beautiful and powerful stories. And it really motivates and drives me to continue to fight and continue to heal, and also to continue to bring awareness.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much. I appreciate both of you for sharing that. I think, you know, too many people, I feel, you know, expect, you know, us people of color to just share our experiences at like nothing, not realizing that some of our experiences can be re-traumatizing, right? And, you know, as, you know, someone who identifies as Latino, but also someone who identifies as an ally towards, you know, the Black community, the Black queer community, you know, I want to thank you so much for being here today and for just being willing just to speak and to share your own personal experiences and being brave like that. I appreciate you. I was going to ask you, T, about a little bit about, you know, you shared with our viewers. You shared with our viewers a little bit about that, you know, your family, you know, did, you know, kick you out essentially. Was that any way connected towards how you personally identify?
I would say until I was able to be in a safe and comfortable space, I actually didn't even come out. But I had always known my family, for the most part, was pretty homophobic. Like, I remember my uncle driving me to school one day, and on the news he was listening to the Steve Harvey radio show about how LGBT marriage, gay marriage, was now legal. And he was like, wow, they're ruining marriage. And I'm like, well, your wife doesn't live with you, so.
That's the real tea.
Yeah,
That's the key.
That's the real tea.
Oh, that's the key.
But I've always, even disregarding my sexuality or my identity, it's just that the way that I have felt to express myself was never good enough for them.
Gotcha.
I was never accepted or validated in my home.
Got you. I got you. Okay. I know. So you shared about growing up in foster care a little bit, right?
Yeah, it's a never-ending adjusting process, and I think it's what makes me have the strength to be able to sit around so many individuals with so many real and prevalent struggles and not kind of lose my stuff and like break down and start crying. It's because, you know, I don't necessarily know what it means to live on the streets, but I know what it feels like to, you know, not be able to call a place a home, you know, and bouncing around from place to place really taught me that there's a difference between somewhere where you lay your head and a home and a family. Wow. And so I think also growing up in different environments, I was always told, and you know, I was always embedded with these concepts that like the real world is so tough and people will do you so wrong and so dirty. But I gotta say, you know, as an independent young adult, I found more family and home, you know, amongst these peers than I've ever found in any home. So I think that speaks volumes to just how much awareness needs to be brought to folks' attention when it comes to these certain circumstances and struggles.
That's real. I have a question for you too. So we know that LGBTQ youth make up at least around about 40% of homeless youth here in Chicago. I'm wondering, you know, can you talk about, you know, maybe in, you know, without sharing anyone's names or like anyone's personal stories, some of the reasons of why that might be from your own personal perspective or from, you know, your own circles of like what you're hearing from people's situations?
Well, like you said, 40% of the homeless population is LGBTQ queer folks. A large amount of them are people of color. Now, what I know is that 85% of that percentage is folks who have experienced the DCFS system and the Child Protective Services system. And I think reason being is because the system, the Department of Children and Family Services, is a very transaction-based system, and I feel as though the support and love and nurturing and care that a lot of the youth who end up experiencing homelessness actually need isn't given to them due to the people that they work with. And I think there isn't any real support and any real solace for these individuals, because when they do leave their families, if they are under the age, they are sent into the DCFS system.
Got you. Thank you for that. We're gonna pause for a second. It looks like we have a caller. Caller, go through.
Yes. Good evening. Great show. You know, I'm a 70-year-old Mexican American Vietnam veteran, and I fought for everybody to have their rights. You know, I don't care what it is, but you know what happened one day? My cousin is transgender. And I wouldn't talk to him. He would always say, hey, cuz. And I said, hey, cuz. I would never say cuz to him again. And then I caught myself, and I said, look, that's why I want to go fight for everybody's right. And now I'm at peace with myself, and I'm at peace with everybody. And that's why I call the show and let you know that people are going to be people. Leave them alone. Love them like you love your own family.
Preach.
And this would be a better world. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, caller, for your comment. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. T, I don't know if you want to shine in on the question that I brought up a moment ago.
Yeah. My view on it is, it's kind of the mentality I feel that a lot of people are born into, where this is something new, this is something that I'm not used to, I don't know about this, and you like A, B, and C, but that's not what you're supposed to like. Personally, I actually have an aunt. She's gone through a lot in her life, and she was born with twins to an abusive husband. And she left him, and she had another child after that, but after that child, she actually got in a relationship with a woman. And my family, ostracized her. They called her, excuse my language, a child pedophile, a molester. They wouldn't even let her hold me when I was first born because of their fears about that. And I just think that whoever you choose to lay with, or however you choose to identify, is not the business of anybody else, to the point where you would need to disrespect someone. Because as a human being, living where we're living, being alive, we deserve respect, and we deserve to be treated equally. I've never understood the point to where people would try to harm those, either physically, emotionally, verbally, just because they identify as something else. And like I said, I was born into that. I think it's really just the mentality, whether it's religion or what you've been taught in general.
That's real. That's real. I appreciate both views. I know that you both actually benefit from participating in some of the programs that happen at Broadway Youth Center, correct?
Yes.
Yes, awesome. Very cool agency, very cool programs, very cool staff. I love them. Can you talk to us about some of the services that you all have benefited from that are very important to you?
Some of the services I've benefited from, I've been going to Broadway Youth Center for a minute. I won't say since the beginning, but since their old location at 615 Wellington.
I never went to that one.
Yeah, it was in the church. Yeah, I went there for a couple months until they moved to the new space, and I've been receiving counseling, whether or not it was from an actual counselor. Like, staff in general have been very open, welcoming, and loving towards me. And they're after hours programs. Their drop-in space is technically from 11 to 3, but they have a morning program, then afternoon as well.
Can you pause? Can you let our viewers know what a drop-in space is?
Oh, I'm sorry. A drop-in space is basically where youth, well, specifically for Broadway Youth Center, youth can come in and receive services at a certain time, certain days. Is it okay if I give BYCs?
Sure.
Hours?
Yeah, go ahead.
They're open Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday from 9 to 3. Then they have after-hours programming as well. Programs like Tyra, specifically for gender non-conforming or trans people, or Through Your Mind's Eye spirituality group, or even our peace circles, which we actually just left, which was very peaceful. We really just get everything off our chest, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I need to participate in some of that.
Hello, just come in, drop into the drop-in.
Gotcha,
Yes.
right? Okay. So, I mean, but do you have to identify as LGBTQ to be part of these spaces?
Definitely not. It is a space centered around those folks, but you do not have to be LGBT to come. But when you come into a space that is specifically for a type of people, you have to respect that and respect those people. Like, if I identified as a straight person, I can't just come in, wow, it's a bunch of gay people. Well, I mean, if you see the big old rainbow and if it says LGBT, I don't know what you kind of expected.
Right. Okay, how about you?
So I first found out about the Broadway Youth Center when I was 15 years old. I actually had ran away from a group home that I was staying in, and I had ran away with another kid who also identified as LGBTQ. And at this time I was not out the closet, and I found out about the Broadway Youth Center and a group they were having for trans-identified folks called Tyra. And Tyra Tyra, before the Broadway Youth Center would close on Wednesdays, used to be on a Wednesday evening. And I remember one day I had came for the group, and I always knew that I was different, and I think that that's something that has caused a lot of complications in my social life. But once I walked into that space and I saw so many people, trans people specifically, going to that group, I looked at them and I said, wow, you are who I want to be. And I knew then that this is the space for me. The Broadway Youth Center does something that's particularly special that I don't see anywhere else, which is they take the youth who are experiencing homelessness and housing instability, and they provide an array of resources and trainings and programs. And what I have seen is that when you use the program correctly, I've seen youth who've come from homelessness to actually being trained and work with as a homeless youth through various youth programs and being able to obtain employment through the Howard Brown Health Clinic or the Broadway Youth Center. And I think that that is such a beautiful way of not only rehabilitating community, but also showing community that we are one. We are together in this. For instance, now I'm 19 years old, and in a half a year, I'll be asked to relinquish my position in my housing program. Had it not been for the Broadway Youth Center helping me receive trainings and really working with me to build my resume and cover letter and helping me get work experience, I have literally damn near 100% chance of getting a job. And I mean, building relationships and networking, it's just beautiful, and I think there's so much that programs can do, but to see the results, I've seen the results with in Living Color with my own eyes. A lot of the people that work for the Broadway Youth Center, I remember when I would run away and there were homeless folks sleeping in the bottom of a church, and now they're working and helping and serving their community. So,
got you. That's awesome. Can you two share a little bit about why is it important to you personally to have spaces out there that still identify as LGBTQ? What if someone was just why do you need that? People are pretty accepting or whatever. What would you say to something like that? Why are these spaces still important to us?
I mean, the fact that we asked that question once again means more awareness. Do you want to speak on it?
Yes, I could say I have not always identified as gender nonconforming. I've always felt different, but I didn't know that was a thing. I mean, everybody watches Degrassi when they're in middle school. But, it's not really it's not really real until you actually go somewhere and experience what's happening around you, and makes you realize I'm not the only person that feels this way. It's what I mentioned earlier is really validating and proves to me that it's okay for me to feel this way and be this way, And at the end of the day, discrimination will always happen to the people who are minorities, whether that's me being African American, me being LGBTQ, or whatever. And going to a space where that is recognized and that I am put as a priority, that way I can be my best self, is what everybody deserves.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yes. So, if someone asks, why do I need a safe space as an LGBTQ person, and if they brought up the idea that other people, people were accepting, that's interesting because I think Safe spaces, from what I recall in history, didn't start off as for a specific demographic of people. Safe spaces started off as refugee spaces. Places where people who had no place to call home would come and feel as community and safe. And, I mean, this being America and all, the land of the free and home of the brave is what they call it. I think to ask why we deserve a place to be safe, because that's what a safe space is. It's a space where people of marginalized and oppressed groups come to gather and commune and be able to enjoy each other's presence and have a life without having to walk down the street in fear for their life. Safe spaces are especially essential for healing, because there's a level of trauma that comes with being put out by your family and experiencing homelessness. And unfortunately, a large portion of the world still isn't equipped to deal with mental illness. And a large portion of homeless populations deal with mental illness.
Gotcha.
And so that's why.
Got you, okay. I know we're running short on time, but I do want to take a moment to ask, what do you personally still see are some of the barriers that young people of color, young people who identify as LGBTQ, and who are black and brown are still facing in the community today?
May I speak on that?
Go ahead.
I feel as if giving people a chance is really the biggest barrier that I face. Like, sometimes people get it in their heads that just because one person who may identify as black or LGBT or whatever, Latino, does something, that they generalize the whole group of people and make it think like, oh, well, if this person did that, then I'm just not going to take my chances on this other person and risk me losing ABC because they did this. But at the end of the day, we don't deserve to be generalized like that. We don't deserve to be grouped like that, because each person is an individual. That's why it's the word individual. You should not deny my chance to do something, whether that's a job, housing, or whatever, just because I fall under a certain demographic. So I feel like sometimes we let our prejudices or even racism just cloud our minds to the point where we block out anything that we don't deem as acceptable.
Got you, awesome. Anything you want to shine in on?
Can you repeat the question one more time for me?
Yeah, so I mean, what are some just really quick, so what are some of the challenges that you still see, from conversations with your peers or you yourself who are facing as someone who identifies as LGBTQ and, black or brown? What are some of the challenges that our young people are still facing in the community?
I can speak for me as a black trans woman. I think there's a level of assumption that comes with being black and brown when it comes to our resilience and our strength and how much we're able to take. And I think we must unlearn all of our biases and prejudice, because if I don't know anything about being homeless, I know that just struggling will force you to not only unlearn what you have learned, but to go on an adventure that you never thought you would. It opens you to a whole new world. And I think that as closed-minded as people can be, as black and brown people, we don't really get the opportunity to think and explore all of the possibilities and opportunities that the world has to offer. Because the reality is that the opportunities just aren't fair for us, and wow. That's like a loaded question. I could go on and on and on about that. I think.
Do you have any specific examples that you might have personally experienced, anything recently, or something that you feel that you can share without re-traumatizing yourself, of course? Of course,
yeah. No, supporting each other. There is this also caring for ourselves. That's the one I'm gonna go with. Okay. Caring for ourselves. As black and brown people, no matter how hard we struggle, we are conditioned to care for other people, to always tend to the next individual, regardless of what type of predicament or circumstance we are in. And I think as having a progressive mindset, I think that one of the biggest struggles is being able to heal oneself and still be able to heal one's community. And I think there's a lot of mixed shadows and messages around that. I think there's like, it's selfish to heal oneself. How can I care about myself when there are people out here going through other things? And the first step to recovery is admitting that there is a problem. And there is. We don't care enough about ourselves sometimes, and I understand it. It's compassion, it's love, it's empathy, and it's all those emotions that make us human. But we hurt each other way more when we neglect and forget about our own needs to tend for the next individuals, because by the time we get them where they need to be, we're 10 times more damaged from where we started. And I think real progress comes when we are able to accept that I can't actually financially, for instance, sustain someone when I don't even have enough money to pay my rent or buy food.
Right. Preach. Thank you. I'm curious, I mean, well, you two are very, very outspoken. I appreciate you both.
I try to give as much as I can.
I'm curious, what does your own, self-healing look like to you? How do you heal? What do you do to cope for yourselves?
Personally, I always, music is the core of my soul. It has helped me through so much. Like sometimes I'll be in a mood, and if I just have my earbuds, I'll be able to calm down, woosah, recognizing my anger and negative emotions.
Can you sing?
I mean, you can't just put me on the spot like that, though. I mean, I couldn't just belt it out like a devil or anything.
Okay.
But the type of music I listen to really isn't the singing type. Corn.
Okay.
Don't really want to be singing Corn on TV.
True.
But in doing that, and then just diving myself into things and like pushing myself, because sometimes I'll just need to take a break from everything because I do so many things at once. I can just get so overwhelming. Just like taking a break and relaxing and like treating myself, or playing games, cooking, whatever I can do to distract myself from my situation that I'm in.
Got you. Okay. How about you?
What do I do to take care of myself?
Yeah, what do you do to take care of
You
yourself?
want to be completely honest?
Listen.
I mean, hold on. Let's not be too honest. Okay. Let's not be too honest.
Okay, let's not be too honest. Okay, you know what? What do I do to take care of myself? Well, first of all, when I really know I need a break, I let my phone cut off. I stopped paying my service, and I just let it cut off.
Wow.
And I utilize the privilege that it is to be able to talk to people person to person, because that could not be my reality because of many things. So yeah, I mean, for me, it's about isolation and reflection, because with reflection, I gain a greater sense of self-awareness, and it brings me peace. Because when I'm aware and I can control my circumstances based on reflection, like, I can honestly say that it gives me an ease of mind, and it lets me know, breathe, everything's gonna be okay. Yes, this is a crash. Things are gonna stop probably for a while, but this isn't the end.
Awesome. Real quick before we wrap up, what is it that you want to do with your life in the future? What's your future goal of a career that you might want to do?
Future goal of a career.
Real quick.
I'm gonna invent a career. I don't know.
Okay, that's a career. Okay, go ahead, Queen. How about you?
I just resource queen. I'm the resource queen. Everyone knows me as a resource queen wherever I go.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you two so much for being amazing community leaders for our community, and for advocating for your peers, and for advocating for yourselves, and just being awesome. Once again, this is David from Alma. I'm completely just blown away by these two beautiful souls. Real quick, if you want to more information on our program, go to www.almachicago.org. Follow us on Facebook, and we're out. I'll see you.